went through my city. Well, you took me by.
Hello there, and welcome again to Honeybees, where we are having discussions with empowering people and empowering you with truth that can change your life. We collaborate and we are intricately social, and that's why we're called Honeybees. I have my public service announcement for you that I've been sharing the last couple weeks is bannersforfreedom.com. We have approval for this message to show how many people, the very minimal that are being reported, of how many people are being injured by the jabs. And we are going to put these on 7 billboards here in town, and your donations can go to Banners for Freedom to help with that. Make sure they are allocated and declared for Vegas billboards when you get in touch with them. You can also go on this website and print out your own materials to hand out if you'd like to get the message out as well that way. So bannersforfreedom.com, help us get the truth out there, because the truth sets you free. And here, speaking of truth, our own dear Jim Blocky, who former teacher here in Clark County, is now teaching The Truth is Out There, which enlightens you and gives you knowledge about what's really going on in the school system and how our country really was founded on God's principles and scripture, so that you can back that up and know that you have power to choose the education for your children. So again, I want to enlighten everyone that truth is what sets us free, and we're destroyed by a lack of knowledge. God's word says so, and he has given us truth if we will listen and not turn back from it. So today I have a wonderful guest with me who is an absolute amazing man of God. I even brought my holy mini worship flags. These are from Gershon.
Okay.
Do you know who Gershon is?
It's a place in Israel, right?
He's actually a prophet from Africa.
Gotcha.
And he gave me these when he was here. And I bring them every once in a while to kind of cheer us on. And I cheer you on. This is Clark Bossert. He is running for Congress, District 3. And he's going to share with us what his vision for our future is here in Nevada. And talk about a man of integrity, a man of honor, a man who serves God, isn't afraid to say so. He's got a most beautiful wife and baby girl, which is what he was just telling me. Her nickname is Honey Baby, so that goes right along with our honeybees. And his beautiful wife is Lindsay. And first and foremost, a comment that your tagline, your motto, can you share that with us?
Sure, and PJ, thank you for having me on.
Yes,
I really appreciate
absolutely.
it. And thank you all to those of you who are watching. It's exciting to be here. And yeah, just to dive in, if you'd like, the tagline that I came up with for the campaign is restoring the foundations and fighting for our future. And the reason why I chose those words is because the foundation of our country is obviously our founding documents. It's our Constitution, it's our Bill of Rights, and it's also our public trust in our institutions. And so through revisionist history and a living interpretation of our Constitution, we're getting gutted of the context of who we are as Americans. And then also, government has a relationship with the people that they govern, and that requires trust. And in this last season, through a dishonest COVID narrative and lies out of our federal health agencies and the Fed saying that they have tools to address inflation when they don't have any, they've lost our trust. Right. And it's their job to earn it back.
When you say the election lost our trust too, in and of itself.
The election, there's many things that lost our trust, and that's why people on both sides of the political spectrum, they feel betrayed by either or both parties. So I'm not the be-all, end-all solution to what people are going through here in America, but I'd like to be the part that I can be in restoring trust to the political process, especially here in Nevada District 3. And then the second half, fighting for our future, I think that if we don't fight for our country, we're going to lose it. So that's
right.
it.
And for me, I know you just have your new baby, but for me, it's my grandkids. I cannot foresee them being slaves, and that's why I thank you so much for running and taking a stand for our freedoms for them and for their generation, so that they won't be totally enslaved.
Absolutely. And to that point, I have everything at stake. I'm not independently wealthy. I've got a little 5-month-old baby, real cute. And there's nothing that the left doesn't want to take from you. They want your kids, they want your private property, they want your civil liberties and your God-given rights. So that's why it's time that we all take a stand and push back against the government reaching beyond their proper jurisdiction. And and also just with the financial situation, John Adams said that there's 2 ways that you can enslave a nation. One is by war and the other is through debt. So we'll come on to that later, but I agree. I want freedom and not debt. Slavery.
We've got both going on.
Yeah.
Endless wars in Iraq and
yeah.
Yes, that's interesting. You should say that. You said that against the threats of tyranny. Those are the threats of tyranny that are at the forefront of our nation right now. And I mean, even look at Canada, how they're treating those truckers. Like let's go for a cruise with your friends and you're bad, but all these other groups that are causing violence and destruction and hurting people, and they're okayed. And it's really crazy how good is bad and bad is good.
You know, we're getting to that kind of place in our history where people are calling evil good and good evil.
Yes.
And it's just so wild. I mean, we've got such hypocrisy out of our governmental leaders. And, you know, just the other day in California, Magic Johnson and Gavin Newsom and a bunch of the mayor of San Francisco and of California, they were all at the, at a football game, unmasked, and everybody else is wearing masks. So it's like, listen, if these are your leaders, if you live in California, there's no pandemic. That's the message they're sending. Right. It doesn't matter. And that there's two different sets of rules. And that's not who we are as Americans. You know, we are all equal under the law. That's the beauty of the law. But we're losing some of that because there's folks that live above it. We need to bring accountability there. So
right.
It's another passion.
A lot of those truths are coming out. We've got doctors all over the nation that are sharing real truths. So make sure you're doing your homework. And the first website that comes to mind that I want to share at the moment is meehanmd.com, meehanmd.com, to show you that the masks really are bad for us. They're making healthy people sick, and that they are ineffective. They do not work. So start there, and there's more homework after that. But and we're going to be having a CVD. I'm not going to say that word anymore, by the way. I just don't want to say it anymore. Sure. So we're going to have a CVD symposium with some of these doctors that have been censored, the doctors that know what's really going on, like Dr. Malone, who wrote the mRNA code, Dr. Brian Cole out of Idaho, Dr. McCullough, Dr. Hopefully McCullough will be here. But anyway, there's going to be several research scientists coming to Nevada in March 26th. Hopefully it will be down here, but it might be up in Reno. But pay attention to those kind of events. Pay attention to those kind of doctors. Dr. Simone Gold out of the American Frontline Doctors. And make sure you really know what's going on so that you can, like he said, take a stand, speak up, speak out. And so your background is quite extensive. I cannot believe this young man is only 30 years old, and he has served in so many capacities already. You tell us about the tough neighborhood that you moved here to help, and what transpired by being a civil policy transformer for that neighborhood.
Sure. And I can even go back a little farther. There's things that were not posted on the website that you can't read, but I'll share them here. But yeah, so really some of my background is that I am running for Congress in Nevada District 3, which is anywhere west of the Strip, from Southern Highlands all the way up to Centennial Hills just about, and then all the way out to Pahrump. So it's a quarter of the state in terms of population. We don't have real representation, so I want to change that. But prior to me jumping into running for office, I'll just back up several years, and I'm from Southern California. I went to school in Virginia, which is where I met my wife. And when I was there, I was a business major for my undergrad. And there was a seminary professor that spoke in one of my classes, and he said, hey, we have an internship. It's in Las Vegas. It's in the 8th hardest neighborhood in America. And we want to do anti-sex trafficking, homeless outreach, and foster care connect. And so I moved out, and I just felt like God was saying, hey, you ought to go. So I went, and I lived on D Street in Washington for 2 different summers for about 3 months each. And during that time, God radically transformed my life. But also, the more that I did that anti-sex trafficking, homeless outreach, foster care kind of work, I realized that those are all policy problems that need to get solved from the top down. And that if you live in that area, you have a 94% chance of continuing that cycle of poverty and brokenness if you were born there. And so I thought that it's totally wrong. And this cycle of poverty was one of the justice issues that nobody's going after, that I really wanted to go after, because I saw the way that the Democrats had created the modern day plantation of government dependence. And they come around every 4 years and they threaten you and say, hey, don't step out of line and vote Republican, otherwise you're going to lose a benefit. And I just felt like, hey, all of these people's lives, they have just as much dignity as my own.
Right.
The mom trying to raise the kids, the guy getting the grade, the young man running the business, whatever it is. Just because I'm running for Congress might seem more exciting, but it's not more significant, in my opinion, as a Christian in the kingdom. So that's been my approach. And so my guilty pleasure thought when I graduated in Virginia was, I want to move to Las Vegas, I want to get a regular job, and I want to continue serving with every free bit of time that I have. So that's what I did. I took a job at UNLV as their budget coordinator for student affairs, working for for a VP in a central finance role. And then after that, I was their machine shop manager for science and engineering, working for principal investigators and researchers. And the more that I did that, it's a radically far left environment at UNLV. And 2 months after I got hired, I felt again like God was saying, hey, you got to get involved in government. And I thought, awesome, Lord, I'd love to. My life is like a coin. You can spend it wherever you want. So I'll do it when I'm 50, and I'll just get a law degree in the meantime. But in this last season, we've seen our country just be thrown down the drain through terrible leadership at the executive level. And it's really been awful. So I just felt like God painted me into a corner and said, you ought to run for Congress in this season. So I'm happy to serve, anywhere. I'm not above being the dog catcher, but really there's certain conversations that need to take place at the national level. I'd like to be a part of elevating those conversations. And then also federal lawmaking rolls right down to your front doorstep. Like I said earlier, they want your kids, your 401k, whether you're rich or poor, there's nowhere that you can hide. The government, they've overstepped their bounds. It's time for us to push back, and that's some of the rationale for why I've jumped in.
It is time to push back, because if you had waited till you're 50, who knows?
Yeah.
That's another 20 years. I mean,
Yeah.
I have seen so much go on just in the last 20 years. I've known in these 20 years that things were coming, and then boom, here it is,
Yeah.
like out of the blue. So it's so fascinating. So you have quite a diverse background in business and finance, but you also have this cultural background as well. And how do you see those fitting together to be a policymaker?
Sure. Well, I think that fundamentally you shouldn't be in charge of humans if you don't understand the human condition. And I think that we are not perfect, but I do think that God has established government to maintain our freedoms. So I think the proper role of government is just to preserve your God-given rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's it. I don't need to tell you what hat to wear. I just need to make sure that your stuff's not getting taken, your life isn't getting taken, and no one else's freedom is encroaching on yours. So I don't know if that answers your question. Feel free to re-ask it. But
yeah, no,
are you just asking like how my social background and then professionally?
Yes.
Well, it's important too. I think that we have a lot of people that are in power because that's what they've had their sights set on for a long time, and they come from a wealthy family. They went to Harvard or an Ivy League school, and then they chose
acting school.
Or acting school, and they chose not to speak out because even if they were conservative, they didn't want to jeopardize their ascendancy into America's ruling class. So we have people that have just gone along with the flow, and now they're in charge, and they don't stand for anything. They don't have any vision, any principle, any conviction. So we have folks, even in my race, that are independently wealthy, that this just seems the next logical step for them to
positioning
take is, hey, I'm wealthy, I'm going to become a congressman. And I think that line of thinking is really wrong. And I've given some of the best years of my life to serve some of the least served communities here in Las Vegas. And so I've been in the same lane for 15 years and really intensively for the last 7 years. So this is who I am, and I think it's important to have a broader perspective about the everyday, kitchen table type issues that people are facing and how we can bring a solution.
So let's say it's your first day in Congress.
First day.
What do you feel like your first task would be when you get there?
Sure. Well, it depends on which committee you get put on, and of course the first day has a load of meetings and quite a bit of orientation, but really eventually, depending on the party that's in power and has the majority, that determines what committee you're on and really kind of the role that you play. So I'll say that right now, the reason why this is so important that, first of all, we take back a majority, but also that Nevada District 3 has real representation, is because if you're a Republican, we're in the minority right now. You're just a passenger on the legislative train. You're not in charge of where it's going. So we need to retake a majority, but also, Susie Lee is the Democrat incumbent in District 3, and so if you live here, you don't have real representation in Washington.
No.
And it was my perception that you weren't going to get it from, if you wanted something changed, you weren't going to get it changed from our current field of Republican primary candidates. So that was also part of why I jumped in. But, when I get to Washington, my thought is you don't need to wait 10 years for a committee assignment. You can always work to leverage your platform right away to make a difference. Something that I specifically want to fight against is the way that we make legislation, because usually you get a 2,000-page bill delivered to your desk the night before at 10 p.m., and it's written by lobbyists, and it's meant to benefit, specific industries, and laws
and
should always... And lawyers, yeah.
And lawyers, they're not easy to understand.
It's not, and it's not impossible to understand, but here's the thing about the law. It should always be generally prescriptive. Mm-hmm. It should be applicable to anybody.
Yes.
It shouldn't be a specific carve-out just for a really nuanced set of circumstances that lie in somebody's pocket. So we get these bills delivered, there's no time to read through them, and then you're required to vote on them in the morning.
That's unacceptable.
It's unacceptable. There's no way any person on the left or the right could make legislation in good conscience in that fashion. So that absolutely has to change. And I can't change that day one, but I can sure as hell make a stink about it
Sure.
and say this is wrong even from the outset, that we're, shaping people's lives
Right.
in this
Right.
kind of way.
Right.
So I want to
They
make
do
a
that
stink
on
about that.
purpose.
Yeah.
They're getting along. They're getting away with so much more by letting less and less people know what they're really putting into those bills.
Sure.
And they hide all kinds of other nonsense that doesn't get passed in other bills into the bills they know that they can get passed.
What we consider a bargain right now in Congress is if we pass a bill that's 51% good, 51% maybe good, and 49% trash. We're like, hey, that's a victory for us, 51%.
Wow.
I mean, it's totally sick. This is why
that's
we're
demented.
trillions in debt. We're spending money that we have no intention of repaying, and we're ruining our country and mortgaging our future.
It is, and it's so true. It's so true, and there's got to be just better solutions.
Mm-hmm.
And have you outlined an idea of solutions you have other than this one?
Sure, and that's something on the website. I think that you probably took a look at the website. If you have any trouble sleeping, feel free to check out Clark Bossert, Bossert.com, and you can read everything that I stand for, because I think that what serves people best is just to be totally honest and transparent about who I am as a candidate and what I'll stand for and who I'm going to be as a representative. Because you don't have unlimited time, but you want to inform your vote. So for that reason, I've said, hey, listen, I'm not gonna change in who I am, but I'll tell you what I stand for. And if you disagree, the beauty of America is that that's your right. There's no political consequence for you. But I bet you if we talk, or if you read my website, we'll probably agree on 7 out of 10 issues. So I really want to go after everything, not just 1 or 2 or 3 single issue voter type deals. I want education, healthcare, the economy, border, foreign policy, all of it. So I really have, I think I wrote 12 or 14 policies. It took me forever, and maybe there's a typo on the webpage, but at least you'll know what I stand for. But feel free to dig in. If there's anything on your heart, you're a Nevadan, I'm a Nevadan, and the things that you care about, I'm sure that there's, 1,000 people out there that care as well.
Right. Well, like we have this, Clark County School District totally
Yeah.
trying to push the shots on our kids.
Yeah.
They had, I think it was 6 or 7 shot sites
Mm-hmm.
allocated to on school campuses prior to Christmas, and they wanted to actually push right after the Christmas break. But then I think it was the Supreme Court had shot down the mandatory for students, and I was on the call for the commissioners that voting down here in Nevada. But how can you inspire as a congressman and get your constituents to show up for more of these meetings, these school district meetings? These the county commissioners spend the most money of all of your taxes of anyone in the state. So they're the ones making all the decisions behind closed doors, last minute, without even really knowing what they're voting for, or because they're voting on the boards that they have memberships with. How do we get rid of all that, and how do you inspire your constituents to show up and speak out literally at these meetings, because that's where things are happening.
Yeah. Well, it's important that you do show up and speak out. I'm the only candidate in this race that's spoken out at commissioners' meetings and Clark County School Board meetings. But it's really important. And the reason why I say that is because, for instance, just with voting, my district was decided in the primary 2 election cycles ago by 16,000 votes. The gentleman that won, he won by 16,000 votes in the primary out of 700,000 people.
Wow. Yeah.
So that's how much it takes to win. We've got a lot of political apathy here in Nevada. And that's okay, we're not the seat of government, but as Americans, we have an opportunity to be involved in our democratic process and civic life. Therefore, you ought to take advantage of that, because other countries don't have that. If you live in China and you want something changed, God bless them, but maybe the best they could do is pray, but they don't have an opportunity to run for high office and make a difference. But here in America, we do. So I would say, if you're on the fence, I was on the fence 6 months ago, and I thought, this can't possibly be the right time for me to jump into running. A year ago, I was, in a machine shop, cutting parts, cutting chips, and working with my hands. And, I'm not a politician, but anybody can do this. Listen, I would trust the common sense of a baker or a restaurant owner on Fremont Street or somebody that owns a construction company. I would trust their common sense more any day over some government bureaucrat that wants to run your life. So what I would say is show up and don't let these people get away with murder, because honestly, they are ruining your children's lives in the school district, and they deserve to be held accountable. So we need to show up in force and say, listen, and this is what we saw in Virginia. We saw all the mothers come out, and they came out in force against the critical race theory being taught in the public schools, and ultimately comes down to this. Hillary Clinton said that the federal government has a more important job in raising your kids than the parent does.
Yes,
that's totally wrong. That's a different worldview than what I believe in.
So
whether or not you believe in the vaccine or not, what I'll tell you is that you have the choice. You should have the choice about what goes into your kid's arm. And first of all, as Americans, we're always going to retain our bodily autonomy. Come hell or high water, that's a hill to die on. We're always going to retain our autonomy to choose what we put in our bodies. But it's a total overreach. It's wrong for them to try to vaccinate kids against the parents' will. The parents, I'm in charge of raising my daughter. You're in charge of raising your kids and nobody else.
That's right. And even the masks are it's just so silly to have them on the kids anymore. We're only one of 7 states that are still pushing the mask mandates. That's only 7 out of 50. So how many is that? I can do math. It's 33 left, right?
I'm sorry, I didn't do the math in my head, but
if it's only 7 left,
yes, we have 43 states.
43 states. 43 smart states and only 7. Yeah. And guess what color those 7 that are still pushing the masks on your children are? You can figure that out.
Blue.
It's the same color as too.
Yeah.
So, we really need to be showing up. There is an actual organization called Make Clark County School District Great Again by, I think her name is Lydia or Claudia, one of those ladies. And they're having a meeting on the 8th. So many things going on. We have to split ourselves in threes these days to be at everything. But if anyone wants to learn more about standing up for the school district, check out Make Clark County School District or CCSD Great Again, and that would be a way to help. Also, there's another organization called Education Warriors. You'll want to look into that. Please start speaking up and speaking out as parents. We're going to be taking a break in just a minute, but I just cannot stress enough that your children are your responsibility before God, the Creator who gave them to you. These people want to take control of your kids because they want control, not because they care for your kids. And so it is our job to do our homework, to do our research, to look into things, and to stand up for what's right. So I hope that you'll be doing that for your children and join us in the fight for our school district. Come right back with us in just a minute and enjoy this break.
We've reached the age of live streaming on social media shows. You may ask, we're already ahead of the curve, so why do you need to advertise with us? Well, only 8% of the businesses in the U.S. are using digital advertising to grow their business. That's 2 percentage points short of reaching critical mass, which will lead to faster results. We have 20 plus shows with a reach of over 80,000. We'll give you commercial ads, website link, and connections to nonprofit organizations. So get your brand ready for digital monetization, for we are looking for sponsors, which will bring more traffic to your business and ultimately mean more sales. So let's bring the world to you. Inquire now. Live streaming on social media is the best new way to interact and bond with your community. Do you love to encourage, motivate, and empower others, but you do not know how? Well, your opportunity starts with us on social media shows. We have 20 shows a week live streamed across the globe with a reach of over 80,000 and growing. So you can host your own show and you can be anything you want to be. So let's bring the community together and let's bring the world to you. Join us now.
Blowing through my city, well, you took me by.
Welcome back to Honeybees, where my masterful guest
PJ.
Masterful guest running for Congress is Clark Bossert, and I call him masterful because I'm just blown away by all the things that he has accomplished, all the things that he's done at just the age of 30. And imagine with the experience that he has now put into our government, into our legislative process for the next 20, 30 years, I feel like with people like this in the running, we have a chance to change the direction of our country. Our country is due for a revival. It's not doomed yet. And Clark Bossert is taking over a pillar of influence. Our Bible says, let God's kingdom come to earth, right? Well, we do that by manifesting his spirit in the earth, by manifesting his will in the earth, and by us taking over the spheres of influence and the mountains of influence. We are bringing his kingdom to earth. Would you agree?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'd say that, well, first of all, I do want to see more of the church activated, because if you look through the Bible, it's very political, and Moses was a chief justice. And
Moses was a chief justice.
Nehemiah was a governor, Daniel was a governor. Most of the figures in the Old Testament, they're all politicians. And even Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, was like, hey, it's too much for you to manage all these people. You need to elect, state, local, precinct, county level authorities. So they had, tens, hundreds, fifties, thousands. And so the Bible is very political.
Yeah.
As Christians, we ought to engage with it. We ought to
Right.
go into every sphere of society and make a difference. So
Right.
I'm going into the government sphere, but all of us have a calling to go into, one of the seven. There's entertainment and media and communication. There's, family. There's church. There's education.
Economics.
There's, business, science, and technology. And I'm probably forgetting one, but I'm just saying, whatever you're called to, every society around Earth has, these seven same pillars in it. It's important for Christians to go.
Right. And going back to the whole concept of honeybees, they know what their job is, each and every one of them, even though they have a little tiny itty bitty brain. And when we live for purpose and passion, according to what God's put us here for, then we won't be allowing the tyrants to take over. And I know a lot of Christians, they don't want to roll up their sleeves. They don't think we're supposed to be involved in politics. I say, well, if you don't want to be involved, you at least need to be influencing. And then come to find out, all of the lobbyists in the Old Testament were the priests. The priests, but they were called counselors. And so, I kind of feel like I'm in that position where I want to be able to counsel those of you, let you know what the people, I get to be in that position to liaison between the common people and those who want to lead us in righteousness and in truth, not to tyranny and socialism and Marxism and control.
Yeah, and PJ, I'll actually add something. I mean, I appreciate
Yes.
the generous
Yes.
introduction, that I have expertise in different areas, but here's what I'll say. First of all, there's plenty of things that I'm bad at, and also it does require a requisite level of mental competence to be able to navigate through certain policy discussions on
Sure.
energy policy or other things. So I would say it is important to elect representatives that can do a competent job, because if they can't and they don't understand what they're talking about from a financial sense or technological standpoint, then some lobbyist is going to come in and say, hey, this is a great bill, just go ahead and sign it. And that's why we've got so many lawyers and, maybe great speakers, great at talking to people, but, really not a lot of understanding of some of the nitty-gritty of the issues that we're
Right.
facing.
Good
But what
point.
I'll say is that we're in a tight position in our country, not because we don't have enough Harvard degrees in the room. We've got plenty of educated people, but we've got folks there that are in charge with a broken worldview.
Right.
And that's why we're...
No principles.
No principles. Broken worldview that prioritizes critical race theory over, real substantive education for our kids. They think that there's, infinite genders and these other things. So I just want to say that it's about worldview, not just education.
Absolutely. And, that's why I said a minute ago, I really am looking to help get to the forefront people who are wanting to activate righteousness and truth. If it's not justice, if it's not truth, they need to step aside. They need to get out of the way. And that's why we need more and more people like you and in the running. And Mac Miller for Lieutenant Governor, I think he's a total man of honor. Dr. Fred Simon for governor, I believe he's a total man of honor. It's probably the only one running for governor with a clean contribution and donation record, by the way. From our research.
Gotcha.
Absolutely. Very important to know. He's not flippable.
It is important to be consistent.
Yeah. Could we say that about you? You're not flippable?
I'm not flippable.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm...
Yes. Explain that to our viewers. What does that mean? You're not flippable?
Well, I mean, I would say that the reason why, first of all, I'm not running to have a theocracy, though I am a Christian. I think that we can win just on policy alone if we'll work hard enough to articulate the value proposition of conservatism. But as regarding being not flippable, there's three ways that people lose their effectiveness and get just leveraged once they get into office. And that's if you care too much about money, if you care too much about re-election, or if you have skeletons in your closet. And I don't have any skeletons. There's nothing that they can dig up in my past that could say, hey, Clark, we've got you. If you don't vote this way, if you don't flip for us, we're going to excoriate you with some information that'll be brought to light. So there's nothing. They don't have any dirt on me. I was actually in Phoenix, and a gentleman, I was at a late night event, and he said, who are you? I've seen you around this room. And he said, oh my goodness, I work for a firm. We've dropped loads of money on counter-opposition research against you, and we can't find anything. And I said, hey, I'm sorry. I married one woman, and I went to a Christian school. I didn't drink through college. I don't know what to tell you. I had long hair in high school.
Yeah.
That's about it. But it's important to not just clean your life up 6 months before. Right. And I've been, like I said, I've been in the same lane for 15 years, doing the same thing, serving people for $0.0 an hour, just because I love the city. And then as far as money, what is a couple $100 million in the scheme of eternity when I have the opportunity to affect hundreds of thousands of lives? And then voting wise, I've always been a lifelong Republican, conservative, originalist, Christian, constitutional candidate, and I love our country a ton. And that's, my parents were the same. So this isn't something that I've just, quickly shifted to.
Right. It's not all about Christian values and we wanting to push our Christian values on people. It's not at all. It's about, like you said, it's constitutional conservatism. Mm-hmm. So if you want the Constitution to be stood for, we need Clark in there. If you want conservative values to be stood up for, we need Clark in there. So it's, just remember that that's what we're fighting for. That's what we're guarding is moral values that elevate the populace. And that's what Clark stands for. So, that he sees the critical need, for educational opportunities and for, paths for people to have their own economic success and not be dependent on the government, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's a great overview of being able to help people and their lives be transformed, but through policy.
Mm-hmm. Through policy, because I believe that human beings, they function best under the context of freedom. And I don't think that having a really repressive, authoritarian, heavy-handed regime is what's going to help people thrive. So I think that freedom, it of course necessarily requires a large amount of individual self-government and accountability to God. But that's what I think human beings, that's the context that they function best under. So for that reason, I'm all for protecting your rights, to your family, to your business, to your personal health choices, to the economy. And a lot of this stuff, it comes out of, honestly, a biblical background. Private property rights come from the 10 Commandments saying, thou shalt not steal. That's what they say. Nobody knows that. And also we have an executive, legislative, and judicial branch of government because the founders and the framers of our Constitution, they looked at who God was in Isaiah and they said, hey, he's the lawgiver, judge, and king. Let's model a government after his character and nature. So nobody knows that.
Say that again. That's awesome. Say that part again.
Yeah, so when the founding documents were being drafted, they wanted to craft a government after the character and nature of God. And so they looked in Isaiah, and in Isaiah, God is portrayed as the lawgiver, judge, and king. And because of that, they said, we want to have a government that has an executive, legislative, and judicial branches to it. So but nobody knows that. That's why the Republican Party has lost a lot of its vision. I'd like to help re-inject some vision because right now, a lot of folks that are Republicans are maybe pro-God, 2A, and anti-abortion. 2A meaning Second Amendment,
right
supporters.
To bear arms,
But
absolutely.
That
was signed into Congress, by the way, on if I was born back then. My birthday is
very cool.
On the day of the Second Amendment.
That's awesome.
December 15th.
But what I'd say is that there's even outside of those three issues, there's even more that we can do to fight for better governance. And the reason why this is important and why our Constitution has principles in it that are so timeless and they work so well for humanity is because they're based on biblical principles. And the average Constitution, it only has lasted throughout history 17 years before it's rewritten. That's the average.
That's interesting.
And we've been here since the founding of our country for hundreds of years with the same Constitution, unchanged. So that's something truly remarkable that I'm not an anarchist, I'm not a full libertarian, not that they're anarchists, but I do think that there is a proper role of government within to help maintain order within the affairs of mankind, but I'm not in favor of heavy-handed authoritarianism. But I think that as a country, we really need to turn back and have a moral society. John Adams, he said that there's other countries that, because they don't have the same moral fortitude and theological or just moral background that we do here in America, he said maybe the best that they can do is to have some kind of autocratic, authoritarian regime. So it comes back to the point that we need two things. We need revival, which is masses of individual changed hearts. We also need reformation, which is the changing of society from the top down. That's what William Wilberforce did in England 200 years ago. He freed the slaves through Parliament and the passing of his bill to get them freed, but then he also got alcohol off the streets, and he just changed the fabric of British society, and it was incredible. I mean, the whole country turned around.
Isn't that incredible? One man.
Yeah.
So what are we going to be able to say? How Clark turned around?
Well, I'd like to turn
Our
all of it
country.
around, here's the thing. Is that I can play the part that I can play, but I have a lot of hope for our country. Even in the midst of our bleak financial situation, other problems that we're facing, I still have a ton of hope because, first of all, I don't think that God is done with America, but I'll tell you, it's definitely going to take everyone at the top, everyone at the bottom, and everybody at the middle. It's going to take all of us. So that's why it's important to wake up, to come out and vote, to support your candidates. If you have financial means, make a donation, because I'm doing everything that I can do to try to make a difference in Nevada District 3 and in our country, but I cannot do it alone. Like I said, I drive a Camry, I live in a 1,400 square foot house. My wife is probably going to lose her job because of the vaccine mandate. So, we need help
it's not
getting there.
It's the shot mandate. Let's
Sure.
call it what it is.
We'll say
it's not a real vaccine.
it's a vacation.
Yeah, it's the shot, the jab, the genetic gene therapy, the experimental gene therapy. She's going to lose her job over it. Isn't that terrible? And so we do. If we can tell them how they can donate to your campaign if they need.
Sure. Well, we need donations, and I'll tell you where the money goes. There's 700,000 people that live in this district. Conventional wisdom says we need to raise, maybe $500,000 for the primary race. And where that goes, even if I spent less than $1 reaching each person, and of course not all of them are voters, that's still $700,000. So I'm not taking a salary. We're not paying out the nose for, consultants, but really, we're putting flyers in people's hands for 30 cents. We're getting the message out there. We're reaching people for pennies on the dollar. And I have probably the leanest campaign in this entire race. And we've got other candidates in my race that are my competitors and opponents, and they spend a ton of money on a carefully curated image, and they have no substance at all. There's no policies on their website, yet they try to raise millions of dollars. And that, to me, is totally unacceptable. I would say that, as a matter of principle, before I even raised, my first $1, I put everything on my website just to say this is what I stand for. So if you want to donate, you can go to clarkbossert.com, ClarkBossert.com, and the maximum that you can give if you're a married couple is $5,800. If you're a single person, that's $2,900. But even if you can only give $29, that's still a lot, and it helps. I'm actually by far the largest financial contributor to my own campaign. So Lindsay and I, we wanted to put our own skin in the game before anybody else could, and to a greater extent than anybody else could. So we've self-funded, but we really need your help getting there. So if you hear something that you like, please consider supporting my campaign. Hop on.
Yes, we need meaningful representation, and that's what Clark will give us. We need leadership that isn't like we shared, looking for position, looking for power, looking for money, looking for the next best place to get what they want done in the community done, rather than looking out for what the community needs. And if we want that proper focus, then we need non-politicians, people that haven't been already in the game, shuffling from one position to another, from this board to this board, while they pass money to each other, whether they're Republican or Democrats. They've all been passing money to each other for 20 years. That's what we're finding. All these Democrats, all these Republicans here.
Yeah.
The Republicans,
I don't want to break your heart, but it's a lot more than 20 years.
Oh, a lot more. Absolutely. 30
Yeah.
30 plus years. Absolutely. But I mean, we're just
Yeah.
the things we've been seeing in the last 20 years are mind-blowing, of who's been getting money from which PACs, and which PACs have been paying which people, and then which people on our commission all work together on this other board, and now they had this their goal that they're I'll get you into this position so we can get their personal goals accomplished, and that's politics. We don't need any more politicians. We need to get rid of the politicians that are just in there for power, control, and money, and that are selling us down the river, literally selling us down the river. So if we want meaningful representation, substantive, what's the word you used on here? Substantive reform. That was one, when I read that on your website, I was like, I had to go look it up. I was like, am I reading this right? And I was like, oh, okay, I understand. It's got to be, if we're going to have an impact, making an impact that really makes a change.
Yeah. It just means something that has substance to it. So I can say anything on the campaign trail, and a politician can say anything when they're in office, but Trump was meaningfully pro-life. There was substance to it. And I don't want to just tell you, hey, I'm going to try to work hard for you. I want to actually make some changes. So, for instance, we talk about healthcare reform, but we don't have advertised pricing in healthcare.
Right.
Why can't we have that?
Right.
You can't make a good decision for you and your family if you don't have good information.
Right.
Everything that I buy at mini Walmart or anywhere else, there's a price on it. That's how I make my decisions. That's how everybody makes their decisions. So it's just, they tell you, they insert ambiguity into the narrative saying we can't have advertised pricing in healthcare. It's just too complex. It's impossible. And that's just a total lie.
Right.
Insurance companies, they run your healthcare decisions. Right. They have an inappropriately large role in your relationship with you and your healthcare provider, you and your doctor. I want to change that. I want to have some substantive changes that you're going to see.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Not just talk and a good heart. I really want to make a change.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So another thing I love, and I want to end with it, so we'll just have to say it again, is how you said you'll never back down and you'll never sell out. And that's really important because most of our politicians have been backing down and selling out.
Yeah.
And so it's not about, again, who's paying you. It's about you paying it forward.
Sure. That's so crucial because the whole purpose of being a leader is that you stand up for the right thing when it's hardest. Because anybody can lead through an easy time.
Right.
But, with the last election, people felt betrayed because I was like, hey, the Republican Party, at least, a majority of them, they're going to stand up and say, hey, we have reason to believe that there was substantial irregularities and fraud that took place with this election. Yes. And we saw one after another, they all buckled except for maybe just a select few that held the line. And we needed to have more thorough investigations, and they all just waffled and they folded right over, and it told you, who's getting paid by these leftist lobbies and where they really stand. So what I want to say is I'm never going to back down and I'm never going to sell out. And when you need a leader most, regardless of the temptation, the money, anything else, I'm going to stand up for what's right. And what I'd say to my other opponents that are tired already in this race, I'd say, listen, this ought to be a breeze for you because campaigning is the easy part. After this, the opposition, the temptation, everything is harder.
The work begins.
The work begins. So this has been a ton of fun. It's been a joy to run. I really love running. I love meeting people. I'm excited to be in this race, and
But you're ready to do the work.
I'm ready to do the work.
You feel prepared to get into policy negotiations and into economic conversations and even environmental too. You have a little bit of a background in environmental as well.
Yeah, I did just a little bit of work for the for some folks that were researchers for the EPA. So you can read my energy policy, but what I'll just say, to just make it super condensed, is right now I'm sick of energy policy that puts Americans and American industries last, and it still doesn't even fix the problem because we're not the big fish to fry in terms of pollution. We've got China and Bangladesh, doing shipbreaking and just massively polluting our planet. And then also we've got 1 billion people coming online in India that, they're going to be expanding their carbon footprint. And, to folks here in the U.S. that are environmentalists, I would say, listen, if you're not serious about the reality of nuclear energy, you don't care about climate change. You're just talking. Because France, they get more than 70% of their energy from nuclear power. We get just a small fraction. And if you want to be carbon neutral by 2050 and have only renewable energy, right now, globally, renewable energy sources being wind and solar, they only make up 3% of the energy on the global power grid. That's just a small drop in the bucket. So, nuclear, it's got 0 carbon emissions. Nobody wants to talk about it because it's too good of a solution. And, we've got 5th generation reactors that are super safe. But I would just say I want to point out the hypocrisy of environmentalists that aren't serious about solutions. What they really want, they don't want to save the planet, they just want to control your life.
Right.
And then want to restrict your industry that you're in and pass ridiculous regulations.
Yes, overregulate everything.
And take away human incentive to produce.
Yeah. And then, really, it's like they're moving everything from economic and biological online, to where our own energy, well, it won't be our generation, it'll be my grandkids or their kids, probably your daughter's kids, where their own bodily energy will be their economic system, will be their crypto.
Well, it is
Literally.
true. Yeah, I mean, there was a patent about basically you would do cryptocurrency mining through, bodily activities, which would basically look like, hey, if the government wants you to go to the store, and if you want to earn your, Fed coin or whatever government digital currency it is, you have to go to Walmart, or you have to do a task that they want you to do, which is really wild. So we've got to push back against these things. And also, data is the new commodity.
Right.
And we have so much personal data, and there's big data analytics. That's the new hot commodity in this century. And they want all of it on you. They want all of your private personal information and how you live. So I want to, first of all, not feed the beast and give them my information. But second of all, say, listen, we need to retain our privacy. We really need some restrictions on Section 230, which lets social media sites act as both a publisher, and then also their social media platform. So they're getting the benefits of coverage from certain laws that prevent them from being sued, but then they also restrict your speech. So they're really having it both ways, and they're having their cake and eating it too, and you're paying for it.
Yes, it is. It's becoming more and more restrictive, and more censored, and more discriminating, and so there's all sorts of new media coming on board. Even Trump does have his own new one coming out pretty soon. But there's frank speech. There's Telegram. There's Gab. There's Rumble. So if anybody wants to know platforms where you can go on and not be censored, that's a few. And then also I want to put a plug in for my producer of this show, Maria Pureza, with socialmediashows.com. If you go on socialmediashows.com, you can find a show about anything: comedy, the city, even trading. There's all sorts of shows that Maria is producing on there as well. Please consider being my partner and my sponsor for Honeybees. I would love that, and be able to give you shout outs and get a commercial on our network for you. And my email address for you is pjbelanger, my last name BELANGER, 7@gmail.com. pjbelanger 7@gmail.com. If you have any questions or anything you'd like me to answer for you, please do give me a shout out on email. I'd love to hear from you. If you have any comments, make sure you go on Facebook Live, YouTube, like and comment and share all of our videos for me too as well. That would be a big help. So until next time on Honeybees, we want to make sure we never back down and never sell out. Thank you so much, Clark, for coming.
Thank you, PJ. And just remember, Clark Bossert for Congress, Nevada Congressional District 3. Clark like Clark County. That's it. Thank you, PJ.
Clark like Superman. No.
I've got the suit underneath.
Superman. So we'll see you next time, and until then, enjoy.
We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. The foundations of our country are being eroded, and the threats to our nation at this time are greater than ever before. The fiscal, monetary, and tax policies passed in Washington have absolutely stolen the wealth of the middle class, gutted private business investment, and exchanged our bright economic future for a vision of government dependence and scarcity. The foundation of public trust in our institutions has been totally lost, and every day there is a new attack on our civil liberties and our God-given rights. Our leaders' lack of integrity, morality, and courage has left the people of Nevada without meaningful representation and devoid of an opportunity to enact substantive reform. In this hour, we need vision, now more than ever. We need leadership. And we need hope that does not disappoint. For Nevada families. For the risk takers. For the most vulnerable among us. For the defense of our God-given rights. It's time to restore the foundations, and it's time to fight for our future. My name is Clark Bossert. I'm running for the United States Congress in Nevada District 3, and I approve this message.
Love.